What is up, YouTube? Welcome to another quickly shot, non-rehearsed, poorly produced video about one of my cars. This is my Fiesta ST today we're talking about. And I just thought, I've been thinking about this for the last couple months, and I thought, it'd probably be cool to make a video. Maybe this will encourage some folks, and, just maybe something I've learned and that I'll pass on. You may disagree. If you do, go make your own video. But this is all about the difference between the higher power ethanol / methanol injection / race gas option tune, which by increasing timing, if I understand it correctly, gets you more horsepower and torque, versus just the simple pump gas tune. And this is my Dyno Graph from both tunes, and I've owned this car 5 years, and it's around 300 horsepower level. You can look at my mods, look at my other videos. I'm not going to answer tons of questions about them. Just check out my other videos and you'll see an extensive documentation of my journey with this car. And but I've used the higher power tune, which is beyond 300 horsepower wheel. This is a dyno, by the way. It's not a virtual dyno. It's a real dyno. So I've used that tune for probably the last 2 years, and a couple months ago I got to a point where just because I was taking a long road trip and I didn't want to have to hunt for ethanol, I thought, let me just switch to 93 and deal with the lower power for the trip, and that way I can fill up anywhere and not have to think about mixing ethanol and all that. And lo and behold, I thought I'd be disappointed. I wasn't. The car had enough power, and I've run several tanks through, and I've decided that I'm going to stick to 93 instead of the higher power tune. So that's what this video is about, and I'll explain why. And so if you look at this graph, the lower numbers are my 93, the lower lines, and the higher ones are obviously my ethanol tune, which, through meth injection and or ethanol and or race gas, you can get about the higher number on these cars. And so my torque, it's about the same. 322 on pump gas, 337 on ethanol tune, and then the horsepower is where there's the big difference, 277 versus 304. The bottom line is, unless you're on the track or on the interstate, you really can't use all the extra power. That's what it comes down to. If this car had better traction, I could, but I can't, and I've discussed that in other videos. But that really is what it comes down to. And I just found myself, aside from the occasional pull, fun, from 20 to 60 against a Mustang GT, an STI, something like that, which was fun, and that's when I could really enjoy that power, maybe 20, 30, 40 to 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, depending on the road condition. But really, aside from that, 95% of road driving, it made no difference. And the reason is because I could never use all that power. And the reason is, as I've discussed in other videos, the traction simply is not there until about 40 miles an hour. Now this car, it has extra wide 215 series federal RSR 595 RSRs. Even when brand new, if I floored it in first and second gear, and that's with traction control dialed into my tune, and I have a video on that too if you want to check it out. Even with that, I still had little melted pieces of rubber all over my mud flaps. So again, I've discussed this, and that's really the flaw of this car that makes this is why a Golf R will beat one of these off the line, even with the bigger turbo, because of traction. But if this car had traction, it'd be incredible. It's still incredible, but that is the one flaw. Let me roll this window up. So anyway, I'm in second. I'm gonna floor it. All right, so factory traction control. You can see where it kept limiting it. Now I'm going to turn factory off, and this is my tune only. So my tuner applied traction control customized to my car, and I just saw a cop here a few minutes ago, so I'm going to be real careful. I'm not going to speed too much, but just for the sake of third gear. So it's a little wet outside, and I'm filming this on purpose when it's wet. Alright, so what you saw there, you saw how it kind of stumbled. The reason it stumbled is that was the traction control helping the car. So as you know, traction control, in my case, if from the factory, it breaks the wheel so that the car will not accelerate and spin the tires or lose traction. With the tune, it simply just cuts throttle, so the car doesn't get any fuel, and therefore it won't go. Both of these the point is to keep you safe, and if spinning ain't winning, so if you're not getting traction, you're not going anywhere, you're not making use of the power. So my point is that if it's under 55 degrees or so, and or foggy, and or misty, and or a little wet on the road, the car just can't get good traction. And even if it's dry in first and second gear, you won't really hook up with this power level in this car till about 40 miles an hour. So again, kind of what I just realized is, while it was nice every once in a while to be able to use that power, like in second gear at 4,000 RPM, flooring it, zooming up to 7,000, shifting into third, and then going from 55 miles an hour up to 80. Yeah, I could use it all. But how often did that happen? That's not safe. It's not legal to do that. And I just found myself, kind of like driving around with ethanol, getting worse gas mileage, having to, mix the ethanol, find good ethanol stations, all those things. And it was just something that I never took advantage of. So, the last couple tanks I've been running the 93 Octane, and again, it's less power, but it's plenty for the street. Now, again, if you're on the track, if you're doing autocross, or if you're just only driving on the interstate and like to accelerate all the time, the power's great. Get the higher power tune, go for it. But really, in most real-world applications, it's just not practical. Remember, I'm on a lower power tune right now. This is a 93 Octane tune, okay? So I'm going 45 miles an hour. I'm going to floor it. This is third gear. See? It's still, you could watch, when you watch the RPM gauge there, hopefully, burps and burps tune. You hear all those pops and burbles coming out of it. You probably can't hear it, but I can. It's awesome. Anyway, check out my video on that too. The perps and burps tune, I think is what he calls it. It's got the pops. But anyhow, so there I was in third gear, and the car still can't hook up. Now, I'm on just 93. Can you imagine if I was on the 25 or 27 or whatever it is, more horsepower tune? It's even worse. And that was in third gear, guys. And it's not even raining. It's a little misty out here. I've got pretty decent tires. They're in good shape. They're not new, but they only have, I think, 17,000 miles on them. They still probably got 10, 15,000 left. I just checked them. They're still fine. So, my point is, the point of this video is just something I've learned, which is most of the time I'm not taking advantage of the power that the ethanol tune has. Now, again, if I was using this on the track all the time, that would be different. But I'm not. This is my daily driver. I like driving it, but, I like driving it hard, but I just don't have a chance to use all this power. And, kind of a final discussion here. I'm going to pull over so I can show my dyno chart again. Just like, really the advantages of the ethanol or the higher power tune, the one that's more toward 300 with this car, is, more power. Higher red line. The red line on this car is 7,200 with that tune. On pump gas, it's 6,500. My tuner did that on purpose. So you get more power, you get a little better red line, but, again, you can't use that power most of the time. And the other issue is, the advantages of having the 93 Octane tune are, well, first of all, you don't have to mix ethanol and find good ethanol. Where I live, it's hard to find good ethanol. I test it, and I've got like E85 that comes out of the pump, and when it goes in my car, it turns into E40. Of course, I'm being sarcastic, but you test it and you realize this isn't E85, this is E40, this is junk gas. So I got to drive around and test it and find good ethanol, that is even good ethanol. And then the mixing of it, and road trips, like if you can't find ethanol, then you got to swap tunes, and so all that, like it's not the end of the world. But for power that I'm hardly ever using, I just realized it's not worth it. And the other thing is gas mileage. On my ethanol tanks, I was getting 290, 300 maybe to a tank. Here I am on 93, and let's see where. So I've got 332 so far, and I've got 20 miles left. So I'm going to get about 350, 360 miles to a tank. So I'm getting 60 more miles or so, which with ethanol I was consistently getting 28. And by the way, that's why it still reads that, because it takes a few tanks for the computer to figure out that your mileage is different. So I would get about 28 on ethanol, but on this tank, on the 93, I get about 31, which is, that's going to be about 350, 360 by the time I'm done, which equates to about 31 miles per gallon. I'm pretty consistent with that. I've owned the car 5 years. I've driven it since 4,000 miles, so 35,000 miles on the car, or 35,000 miles on the car. So I've watched it very carefully. I tend to get about 31 on 93. So, those are the advantages of a pump gas tune. And to be honest, guys, I was just power hungry when I first got this car. I came out of a high-powered Subaru STI, and I wanted that level of power. It's just the truth. So I did everything I could to get it there, and I did. Interestingly, the fastest I ever got my Forester XT with the STI swap, I got 297 all-wheel horsepower and 337 torque. With this car, I've got it to 304 and 337. Now, the Subaru was on pump gas, and this is on ethanol for this. So if I had tuned the Subaru with ethanol, it would have been higher. Of course, that car had traction. It would be faster off the line. This car would be faster in a pull because it weighs so much less, a dig from like 20 miles an hour. But, that's kind of like where I've arrived. Maybe it's just because I'm older and I don't care as much. It's like having the opportunity to have that extra 27 horsepower and those rare moments that I need it. I don't know. I'm just being honest. And guys, the other thing, like I was kind of looking at this here a moment ago. Like, did you notice here the power difference really is the most when you're up past 6,000 RPMs. Really up until here, which is 5,000 RPM, it's a little squishy, and then here's where it opens up. You can see the power difference between the two tunes is more, which makes me realize like I'm really only getting the biggest benefit from 5,000 to 6,547 RPM. Now again, that would redline at 7,200, but this is before I had the redline increased. But you get what I'm saying. Most of the benefit comes later in the power band. How often am I in third gear, again, the place where the tires won't spin, at 5,000 RPM? Well, third gear at 5,000 RPM is like 70 miles an hour, something like that. That's when the power is enjoyed. When is that safe and legal and right to do? On the track and on the track only. Unless you like breaking the law and risking your life and other people's lives unnecessarily, which I don't think is good. But, so, again, just looking at this graph, it's like, man, like I'm really getting only half the power in the time that I kind of use it. So those are my thoughts on pump gas and ethanol. I've just turned into a pump gas guy, and I've got the ethanol tune still. I've got a race gas tune. Anytime I want, I can shove it in there and, find somebody that, I want to race, or let them drive my car maybe if I'm, trying to show off. If I'm selling the car, I'll certainly put it on the ethanol tune so they can feel all of it. Don't plan on selling it, but you get what I'm saying. There's just not a lot of times to do that. And it's kind of where I've realized, just being honest, again, I've owned this car 5 years and I'm just finally getting at this. So maybe this is just a testimony to how little I know and think about these things. But owning a lot of cars, driving this one a long time, playing around with these different tunes, this is kind of where I've arrived at. And I thought I'd pass it on. I thought it was a worthy discussion for YouTube. So appreciate your time, and hopefully it was encouraging in some way. Leave me comments if you have them. And yeah, peace to you. Be good to others. And Happy New Year, by the way. Later.